Que nous le voulions ou non, que nous le sachions ou non, nous sommes responsables de ce qui nous unira demain.
Thank you, Nancy.
Going to work on your tunes again tonight, sir? You're always working, aren't you?
Hello and welcome to our weekly film show with critic Lisa Nesselson. Hello, Lisa.
Hello, Eve.
Now, we're starting with a film about the Paris attacks of 2015. November doesn't include a single scene at the Bataclan or the bars targeted, but delves into the traumatic aftermath as authorities race to capture the terrorists that coordinated the attacks. A quick word on it, Lisa.
Well, as with Jean-Jacques Annaud's recent film about the day that Notre Dame Cathedral caught fire, we know how that ended, but the people who were called to the scene had no idea whether the building was going to collapse. And so it is with this. 130 people had never been mowed down in a very short space of time in the city of Paris before, and the authorities had their training and their experience, but how do you deal with that?
OK, well, let's find out some more with Selena Sykes.
Right.
The 13th of November 2015, a date now synonymous with an unfathomable tragedy for France and an unprecedented night for its counter-terrorism units.
Il y a des tirs dans le 10e arrondissement, des rues, donne-moi les rues.
Minute after minute, the magnitude of what authorities were facing became increasingly clear.
Les terroristes sont entrés au Bataclan, en plein concert.
The horrors that took place in the French capital that night remain off-screen. Instead, November focuses on the frantic manhunt that followed.
Faisiez quoi le soir du 13 novembre?
I liked the idea of looking at the shockwaves that stemmed from the event rather than the event itself, to focus on a group that during all of the chaos came together and found solutions, rather than looking for any sort of sense in obscene events.
5 days of extreme stress, interrogations, doubts, pressure from the government, false leads and the stakes. In an unprecedented investigation, as authorities rush to catch those who coordinated the attacks.
Non mais reprends-toi là, rassemble-toi, moi j'ai besoin de toi.
An alternative portrayal of the tragic events that reassured actress Sandrine Kiberlin to take on her role in the thriller.
I hesitated about doing the film. It's such a recent event and one that changed all of us on different scales. But I wanted to defend the angle that was chosen. I knew nothing about the authorities involved, whose job it is to protect us, and who were constantly trying to foil attacks.
An almost documentary-like tribute to those who remained in the shadows that will take many of its viewers back to where they were on that night.
Je sais où sont les deux terroristes.
Now, Lisa, this is an event that marked us all. What's the verdict on the film?
Well, this is a very muscular, propulsive movie, but I've rarely seen the French side of people assessing it and the English language side so divided, because French people know the story inside out, and so they can just delve into it. But English speakers, even if you live here, even if you were there when it happened, they just sort of take the chaos a little bit too far. There's ambient urgency, of course there is. There's people barking up wrong trees. There's incredible luck. There's a witness going out on a limb and not being rewarded for her trouble. And if you just see one film about, you know, these events and their aftermath, I heartily recommend another one that's
not this
playing.
one.
Yes, called Revoir Paris, Paris Memories, starring Virginie Efira as a woman who was in such an attack, and how she replaces her amnesia with feelings and thoughts.
OK, well, now to a film about an extraordinary French woman. Simone Veil was an Auschwitz survivor and played a leading role in legalising contraception and abortion in France. She was also the European Parliament's first president. Let's take a look at Simone, a woman of the century, directed by Olivier Dahan.
Oh chérie, viens.
On n'est plus là-bas, Simone. On est revenu. Je suis fière de toi. Et maman serait fière de toi. L'espoir,
Je félicite Madame Veil pour son élection.
c'est dans l'Europe que je le place. L'Europe qui a surmonté la haine et la barbarie.
Votre travail, Madame Veil.
La vocation, Ce n'est pas un travail, c'est une vocation.
Le FN veut mettre le bordel, il faut partir.
Je reste.
Vous ne me faites pas peur. J'ai survécu à pire que vous.
J'avais ton âge.
Well, it looks good, Lisa, is it?
This is an involving and satisfying movie. It was way better than I expected. I recommend it pretty much without reservation. Elsa Zilberstein, who plays Simone Veil in the last 40 years or so of her life, is extraordinary. But so is Rebecca Marder, who plays her as a younger woman. And this basically follows her life from her childhood, a very happy childhood in an agnostic to atheist, completely assimilated, patriotic Jewish family, her deportation with her mother and sister to Auschwitz. And there's way more footage than I expected of the terrors of being deported and what happened at the destinations. But it's extremely well done. And we think, had this woman perished, we would possibly not have had this incredible defender who, because of what she witnessed and experienced as a young person, was incredibly compassionate about the conditions for prisoners, no matter what horrible crimes they'd done. She was very early in trying to get better treatment for HIV positive people who were at that time, doomed to die. She did so much for women's rights and was thanked in the street for it. Superhero movies are stupendous sometimes, but a movie about a real hero told with this much skill gives us so much more.
She certainly sounds like it, and we can hear from the actress Rebecca Marder, who played the young Simone Veil, who you said was extremely good.
Aside from it being a biopic, a portrait of a woman, the film talks about transmission and memory, about our duty to educate, to learn, to bring some understanding, to shed some light.
Pour la lumière, ça c'est une leçon de force de vie.
Well, it's certainly one I'm going to go and see, Simone. In our next film, French actress Léa Seydoux stars in a story of love and loss called One Fine Morning. It's French writer-director Mia Hanson's Love's 8th film.
Kinsler, vous êtes la fille de Georg Kinsler.
Oui, c'est moi.
C'était un prof génial, ça m'arrive encore de relire ses cours.
Pardon. Au revoir.
Moi, tu me vois?
Ah, bah oui, bien sûr, oui, je te vois.
Et est-ce que tu peux me dire si j'ai les cheveux courts ou longs?
Ils pourraient être longs.
Clément?
Je te reconnaissais pas avec les lunettes.
J'aurais jamais cru que ce serait possible entre nous. Que je pourrais te désirer autant.
Well, your face said it all during that clip. What can you tell us about One Fine Morning?
Well, I can tell you it received a very warm welcome in Cannes, where it premiered in May in the Director's Fortnight sidebar. I can tell you that it has been purchased for most of the planet. It'll be released in North America, South America, and the Middle East. And I can tell you that I don't understand why. Mia Hansen Love is an acquired taste who I just haven't managed to acquire it. So a lot of people like what she does, but I'm not one of them yet.
But lots of people find her work delicate and moving. Why don't you?
That's an excellent question. I think there's usually an autobiographical component in what she does, and I just don't think her life is that interesting as a starting off point. In this film, Léa Seydoux is very good as Sandra, who is a single mother of a young daughter. She works as an interpreter. She's recently embarked on an affair with a married man, and the most touching aspect of it is that her father, very well played by Pascal Gregory, is suffering from a degenerative memory disease, which means that he's losing everything that made him a brilliant writer, teacher, philosopher. And she and her sister have to figure out where to park this man who can no longer care for himself.
Okay, well, it sounds interesting. The director, Mia Hansen Love, was a guest on our sister channel, and she told us how important this film is to her.
This film was done through some sort of personal necessity, that I couldn't advance in my work as a filmmaker without getting past this story. I have to say that this was the most cathartic experience I've ever had making a film, especially as at the same time I lost my father to COVID. So the making of the film was a way to keep his presence around for longer.
So that was the director of One Fine Morning, a film not recommended by our film critic, Lisa Nesselson. And just before we go, tributes have been flooding in for Murder, She Wrote star Dame Angela Lansbury, who's died at the age of 96. The three-time Oscar nominee had a career spanning 8 decades across film, theatre and television. Here's what she had to say on playing a detective in the TV crime drama that made her famous.
She was a lovely woman to play, but it didn't require any, acting ability on my part at all, none.
Now, Angela Lansbury was one of the last surviving stars of the golden age of Hollywood cinema, wasn't she, Lisa?
She was a consummate entertainer, and she had such an extraordinary range. She could voice an animated singing teapot in Beauty and the Beast, or she could play a phenomenally evil character in the original Manchurian Candidate, which is the mother of all justified conspiracy movies. And apparently she was a delightful person in real life. I always like when those two things match up.
Yeah, she definitely came across as one. She was much loved. Take a listen to some of her Hollywood fans.
I grew up with Murder, She Wrote as a series, and I fell in love with her character. It's sad that we lost her. She lived a happy life, and I'm just here to celebrate her life.
I grew up on Beauty and the Beast. It's one of my favorite movies growing up. So yeah, I just had to come and just give my condolences out for her today.
Biggest icon she's ever touched my heart, and I've always watched her. I learned from her.
Fans paying tribute to Angela Lansbury. That's all we have time for. Thank you very much, Lisa. And thank you for watching. See you next time.
Tale as old as time, true as it can be. Barely even friends, then somebody bends unexpectedly.